Howdy folks, welcome to Bullish on Farming. Today's November 29th and this steer here, he's not too pleased with me. Big adjustment day for the cattle. Had nothing on the ground yesterday, woke up to 3 feet of snow and getting another 40 centimeters by tomorrow morning. Cows haven't been off grass yet, and I'm going to talk about how that's a benefit for us. Facing what we're facing now, which isn't really a big deal. By not taking the cattle off grass, they stay in touch with their instinctual reactions to their environment. So if they were grazing yesterday, it would make sense that they would graze today. As you can see, all their heads are down. Snow's nice and fluffy, hasn't iced over yet, and that gives the cows time to figure it out. Now, I had moved them into that field, which had grass, but hadn't rested as long as this one. And so the grass in this field's about 2 feet, but with about 2.5 feet of snow, you know, it lays a lot of it down, but there's still some vegetative matter sticking out, which is a nice lead and a clue for the cows. And with the snow so light and fluffy, it doesn't take much for them to find the green under the white. And so we can go take a look at what they're doing over here. Yeah, you know, it's not even December yet, and looking at the 14-day forecast, everything's staying sub-zero, and we're getting tons of snow. So looks like it's going to be a cold, snowy start to winter. And we do have a stockpiled field all the way at the other end of the farm, past the barn. But we still have some grazing to do on this side yet. So you can see the nice big bites that these cows are getting. And, you know, a lot of people, like for instance, this morning, my neighbor said, "Oh, so what are you going to do with your cows? You're going to start feeding them hay now?" And I said, "No, plenty of pasture yet." So we're going to graze what we can. And of course, if I had to, I'd bring out a bale and we'd start bale grazing. And, you know, that's the plan for our next field, which is stockpiled. See how much the cows can get out of it. And then we'll bring out some bales to do some bale grazing when it calls for it. But right now, these cattle are full. Their rumens look good. You know, some of the older girls, I'm going to keep an eye on them, like this old longhorn here. But as you can see, she's digging deep. You want to watch the older girls with who possibly have less teeth, because they're not as strong as grazers. So, but nonetheless, we're looking to have hardy cattle and setting them up for success. So if I had been feeding them hay for a month, turned them out to pasture, they may not have the clue. But because they've stayed in the rhythm of foraging and grazing, you know, cattle existed long before there were buildings and machines and hay. So they had to make do throughout the seasons. And perhaps they would have migrated south, but, you know, working with your property, you can figure out a system that works for you. For instance, I've been allowing them to trek back to a stream that runs through the property all the way down there. And so I've just been opening up fields and keeping the back fences open. And that leads us right to over there, where we'll move across the farm when it's time. But we haven't fed hay to our cows once. You know, you could take a look. This is a mum right here. She's looking good. These are a couple steers. Don't look like they're hurting to me. Look, we finished beef. I don't want my steers to be hurting. Yeah, that's it, buddy. Brush it off. Nothing wrong with a little bit of frost on their coats. You know, their coats have been getting shaggier. The calves are nice and shaggy. Got a couple of the calves here. And see, when the cows are calved out into a on pasture and then they graze into winter, you know, you're growing hardy calves that are staying in touch with their foraging rhythm. And so, you know, if you can keep your animals foraging 8, 9, 10 months out of the year, and, you know, if your climate allows it, if you're more south than us, 12 months out of the year, which we would still aspire to do with properly stockpiled fields, but I'm not going to force anything on my cattle. And it looks like this year we're going to have to start feeding hay sometime in January. And if it comes earlier, so be it. But it looks like up until January, and even a couple weeks into it, we should have enough stockpile. But when you're doing that with your animals, first of all, you're keeping them in alignment with nature's design. You're keeping hygienic conditions, because nature is recycling the cattle's waste and they're moving to fresh sections. And you're not spoon feeding your cows so that they rely on processed ways of feeding. You know, I've mentioned before that there's nothing wrong with feeding hay, but we have to be real and say that, you know, hay is a form of processed food. Sure, not like sugar processed food and fake food that humans eat, but it's cut, dehydrated grass, baled, stored for feeding. You know, nature never did that. And it's not wrong. I think it's good. It helps us grow our cattle and keep them healthy when we don't have enough land for our farm or if there's adverse weather conditions. However, these animals evolved foraging vegetation rooted in soil. And so there's no doubt that if the fields are well rested and ready for your animals, that is the optimal way for them to feed. And so we just try to do that as much as possible. Definitely want to check your fences before you move them into a fresh field. I got cocky, opened up another fence because, you know, that field with 40 centimeters coming overnight, I wanted to bring them into the field with the luscious feed. And this one was one of those fields. This one and the next one they'll be moving into past that tree line. And so I feel comfortable over the next 48 hours for the cows to hunker down here and have enough to eat so that I don't have to do any chores or, you know, pull any stunts to get the cattle comfortable. And they're not even going to go back to their water trough. I'd put my money on it. Water trough, I mean the stream. Because by foraging in such a way, they're consuming moisture through the snow. And so in my experience, you know, I grazed 250 head, all mums, with their calves weaned on cover crops through the fields with snow just like this. And it must have been something around like a 1,000-gallon water tank. And sometimes we would go 2 weeks without even having to fill it. You know, a week would go by, they wouldn't even put a dent in it because they're just getting all of the moisture from the snow. Mind you, there were turnips and plenty of feed that had high moisture content, radish and such things. But still, in my experience, the cows consume way less water when they're grazing through the snow. So that's also a plus. We do have a natural water stream, and in the stockpile field, we have a pond that'll be breaking ice when things start to freeze over. But you know, you don't have to stress if you got this much snow on the ground because the cows are going to get at least what they need. You know, they won't be hurting. And when you understand that these animals went through adverse conditions through evolution, the moisture they get from the snow is enough to survive and enough to, I was going to say thrive. Of course, you need to monitor your animals, but I wouldn't worry about it. We always have water access, of course, but if I had to go 2 days without it and there was snow on the ground like this, I wouldn't be stressing. So yeah, you know, we're ready for the snow to keep coming. Cows have figured it out. They started bawling at me this morning because they were like, what's happening? And of course, most of the cows grazed into the snow last year, but our longhorns, we got through the winter. And although we were bale grazing outside, we were feeding them inside and outside of the barn, mostly outside of the barn, but bales, like I say. So, you know, But a cow's a cow. So we're grazing into winter, setting them up for success. Not unplugging them from the natural rhythm and making the most of it. You know, there's a nice little spot right there. You can see the feed that's popping out. And the more they walk, the more they stir up the snow, the more is revealed. And, you know, nature has its own intelligence. So the animals know how to respond to the land if you don't unplug them from nature's rhythm. Got bale stocked up in the barn just in case, but we're feeling pretty good about what's going on now. So anyways, folks, anyone who got hit with the snow, best of luck to you. For those of us who are used to it, although it's an earlier start than last year, it's no big deal. Just another day on the farm, business as usual. I'll cap it off here. I'd like to say thanks for stopping by and God bless you all. See you on the next one.